Okay, good evening, everyone. We're going to get started in order to take full advantage of this wonderful opportunity for conversation with our guests. Good evening and welcome. I'm Craig Snyder, the President of the World Affairs Council of Philadelphia. I ask you, as I do at the start of every program, to please take a moment to silence your cell phones if you haven't already done so. But that being said, we encourage you to engage with the Council on our social media platforms. Please feel free to tweet during tonight's program with our Twitter handle @WACPhila. And of course, please like the World Affairs Council of Philadelphia on Facebook if you haven't already done so. We have had a busy spring of events. We're winding down towards our summer break, but we have a few more things that I'd like to review with you before that break. Tomorrow night, we are hosting an event titled Nuclear Nightmares, Securing the World Before It's Too Late. If you haven't signed up yet, it's not too late for that. The event's taking place in our conference space at 1 South Broad Street, and you can reserve your seat before leaving tonight if you'd like by visiting the registration table on your way out. And for then the last event of our season, I'd ask you to consider joining us for a discussion of the future of energy and sustainability, which we'll be holding on June 2nd, featuring video showings from what's called the Rational Middle Energy Series, really a provocative approach to the subject, followed by a panel discussion. This is also the last opportunity of the season for you to use lecture passes if you're a member of the Council. These events and the Council's citizen diplomacy trips, including the many trips that we've done to Cuba over the years, along with the support of our members and partners, enable the Council to offer its most important programs, those education programs to a diverse group of over 2,100 middle and high school students in more than 80 schools throughout the Philadelphia area, in which we seek to foster the skills and sensibilities that the next generation will need in order to thrive and compete in a knowledge-based global economy. Before I introduce our speakers, I would like to extend my thanks to Drexel University for their sponsorship of tonight's event, and I'd like to acknowledge the Consular Corps Association of Philadelphia as a cooperating organization for helping us promote tonight's event. And now, with that, I'm delighted to welcome our guests, Deputy Chief of Mission Juan Lamigueiro and First Secretary Ms. Yanet Stable. In 2002, Ms. Stable began her work, I should say, as Special Assistant at the Division of Cuban Residents Abroad and Consular Affairs at the Cuban Ministry of Foreign Affairs until 2006. She served as Second Secretary at the Cuban Interest Section from 2007 to 2009, and she worked at the North American Affairs Division back at the Ministry of Foreign Affairs until September of 2013. In October 2013, she was appointed First Secretary at the Cuban Interest Section in charge of political affairs. Welcome. Mr. Juan Lamigueiro serves as Deputy Chief of Mission of the Cuban Interest Section of the Embassy of Switzerland in Washington, D.C. He graduated from Raul Garcia Higher Education Institute of International Relations and holds a master's degree in international relations. He's done postgraduate studies in European issues and international economic relations, and previously served as Third Secretary at the Cuban Embassy to Berlin, Germany, and Second Secretary at the Cuban Embassy in Paris, France. So, without further delay, please join me in welcoming our guests, and Mr. Lamigueiro will make some opening remarks.
Well, first of all, thank you very much for coming. Thank you very much for giving us the opportunity of exchanging with you.
Thank you.
Okay. It's better now? Okay. Well, I repeat, thank you very much for coming. Thank you very much for giving us the opportunity of exchanging with you. And a special thanks to Mr. Snyder and the World Affairs Council. Well, the announcement made by the presidents Raúl Castro and Barack Obama in December 17 started a process that could lead to the normalization of relations between Cuba and the United States. This normalization should include the lifting of the so-called embargo, the lifting of the commercial restriction to deal with Cuba. But what happened in September 17, in December 17, was a result of a process. I have been here for almost 4 years. I have learned 2 important things working here. First, the American people is really a very nice people. And second, almost everybody here in the United States want to have a different relation with Cuba, want to have good relation with Cuba. In February 2014, Atlantic Council conducted a survey to learn the position of Americans with respect to a change in U.S. policy toward Cuba. The result of the survey showed that a majority of the Americans from every region and both parties support normalizing relations with Cuba. Nationwide, 56% of respondents favor changing U.S. policy toward Cuba. The 60% of Democrats and the 52% of Republicans favor a policy change. But maybe the most surprising result of this survey was the Floridian position. For several years, everybody said that Floridians will never accept new relations with Cuba. And the 60% of respondents in Floridian are in favor of this relation. If you study the result of the last presidential election, it is very easy to understand that now the majority of the Cuban Americans that live in Florida want to have an approach and want to have a different relation with Cuba. Since 2009, both countries, the Cuban and the American, are involving in conversation to identify issues of common interest and to cooperate in these issues. For example, we are discussing about prevention and mitigation of natural disasters, the protection of the environment, and how to cooperate in fighting drug trafficking, human trafficking, and terrorism. It is easy to identify that really both countries have common interests in issues very important for the national security of both countries. But what is happening? What is happening in the Cuban economy during all this year? Well, as a result of a national debate with the participation of over 8 million of people, a document entitled A Guideline of the Economic and Social Policy for Cuba was drafted and approved by the National Assembly of People's Power in 2011. Since this document was approved, Cuba has been moving through what the Economic Commission for Latin America has qualified as the most important structural change in the region in the past decades. This process is aimed at looking for a more efficient and sustainable economy in Cuba. As a result of this process, it is expected we to have a dynamic and efficient industry and agricultural production. This way, our exports are expected to diversify and the foreign trade balance to improve. Achieving economic efficiency in a state company is a priority in that context. The excessively centralized model we had until 2011 limited the development and efficiency of these enterprises. After 2011, they have had greater autonomy and they have met the market demands based on their results. Moreover, the development of a non-state sector has been encouraged. The state will only remain responsible for the managing of a strategic sector. Private and cooperative ownership has been expanded and they have contributed to meet the people's demands for production and services. The impact of this sector is already seen in the agricultural production and food service in our country. Small farmers currently play an important role in supplying the national markets. In this context, one of our priorities is to stimulate the foreign investment in Cuba. We need, it is estimated that we need, for reaching our goal of having a sustainable economy, we need foreign investment for $2 billion worth annually. We just approved in Cuba a new foreign investment law. Specialists say that this law is the friendliest law for foreign investment in the region. Every year, the state establishes a portfolio of foreign investment opportunities containing those opportunities identified by the Cuban government entities. This portfolio responds to all priorities, but it is not exclude the possibility that potential investors will make further proposals. Our priority sector for the foreign investment are where we have agricultural processing, construction materials, biotechnology and pharmaceutical, renewable energy, telecommunication and informatics, tourism, real estate, and services. If you are interested in one of these projects or you want to propose another project, you can contact us in our section and we can organize how to deal with the Cuban counterpart to discuss about this project. Project should meet the following general objectives. Well, we need that this project generate exports or promote import substitution. Use modern, environmentally friendly technology, provide employment, and develop links with the Mariel Special Development Zone. And now we are entering in two important issues: the Port of Mariel and the Mariel Special Development Zone. Well, we just built in Cuba a new port, the Port of Mariel. But what this port has made it very attractive is that this will be the only port in the region with condition to receive post-Panama's vessel. You know that now the Panama Channel is rebuilding, and the future trade between Asia, China, and the Western Hemisphere will be using this kind of vessel. It is not difficult to understand the play that this port will role in the region. It will create new dynamics in the trade of the region, in the trade of the United States with Central America, South America, in the trade from China to the United States, and in the trade from China to Latin America and Central America. Very related to this port, we just built what we call the Special Development Zone of Mariel. It is a sort of industrial park, and we have created all the conditions in this zone for the foreign investment. Specialists say that this zone will become an important platform for the producer in the region. And the most important company from Asia, and we hope the United States, will be interested in produce in this zone to re-export even for the United States. It is true that the administration start this process, but we have to be clear when we say that the embargo remains still in place. We have an important example: agricultural trade. In 2000, the Congress approved agricultural trade with Cuba, and we started in 2000 a process of increasing our agricultural import from the United States. But in 2008, we had to stop this process due to the payment condition, because as a result of the restriction, we had to pay our import in cash and in advance. Everybody knows that for developing the trade, and we are talking of thousands of millions of dollars, for developing this trade, you need to organize this trade on trade credits. We received in 2008 the proposal of other countries, China, Vietnam. They proposed us credit for our trade, and we changed our import. But to be honest, it doesn't mean that we are not interested in retaking our import from the United States. There are two reasons. First, you have a very good products. Your rice is, you have a variety of long grain that is the favorite of the Cuban people. The apple from the United States is the favorite of the Cuban people. Then you have a very high quality products. And on the other hand, we are very near, very close each other. The transportation is easier from the United States to Cuba and not from Asia and not from Europe. Then our normal market in normal condition will be to import from the United States. But there is another example. Cuba is now one of the most well-positioned countries in biotechnology. The Cuban biotechnology industry has produced a remarkable array of products, advanced vaccines, pharmaceuticals, and diagnostic products. More than 40 products and technology created by the industry are currently in use. The industry now produces 33 different vaccines, 33 anti-cancer drugs, 80 products to treat cardiovascular disease, and 7 drugs to treat additional diseases. Special attention deserves the case of Heberprop P. Heberprop P is a drug developed by Cuban scientists at the Center for Genetic Engineering and Biotechnology in Cuba. This drug is a cure for diabetic foot ulcer. Its effectivity was proved in several countries. An American institution tried without success to develop a similar drug. Diabetes is a serious and growing problem in the United States. More than 23 million people in the United States are believed to have diabetes. Unfortunately, they cannot benefit of the Heberprop P because of the commercial restrictions that are still in place. Well, as you can understand, there is a lot of opportunity for the commerce and for the relation between our countries. For the people that study the relation between Cuba and the United States, it wasn't a surprise what happened on December 17. But what it was a surprise for us was the reaction of the American company. We have had during the last 3 months at least 30 meetings with the most important company here in the United States. Everybody wants to study the perspective of the Cuban market. Everybody wants to study the potentialities of the Cuban market. Why? Well, specialists are saying that even with the 12 categories approved by the administration to travel to Cuba, it is expected that next year we would have in Cuba 1 million of American visitors. Well, I have to say American visitor and not American tourists. Several studies estimated that in a normal condition, without restriction, for traveling to Cuba, the number of the American, well, now I can say tourists, of the American tourists to the United States could reach 10 million of visitors. We have in Cuba every year 3 million of tourists from Europe, from Asia, for the Canadian. They love the Cuban beaches. Imagine our hotels, our infrastructure is preparing for 3 million of tourists. If tomorrow the Congress approves the lifting of the travel ban, you can imagine that we need to build a lot of hotels. We need to improve our infrastructure to say welcome to these 10 million of American tourists. Well, in this case, tourists. I always enjoy the reaction of the American people when they travel to Cuba for the first time. They always say, the reality is that Cuba is a very different country than I thought before visiting the island. Cuban people is very friendly, and the safest place for an American visitor in the region is Cuba. We don't have organized crime. We don't have drug problem in our street. You can travel to Cuba. You can discuss with the people on the street. You can to hear from them what they think about our country and how happy we are in front of the possibility of having better relation with you. To finish, I want to make a proposal. We was talking with our friend of the World Affairs Council that the moment to discover the Cuban market is now. The moment to discuss with the Cuban counterpart to identify projects of common interest is now. You don't have to wait for the listing of the so-called embargo. Travel to Cuba now, discuss with your counterpart. I have to share with you a secret. After December 17, we have received in our country 300 requests of companies from 30 countries that want to invest in Cuba. Hurry up. Go to Cuba, identify your counterpart, and try to deal with us. Thank you very much. And I wait for you in Cuba.
Do you want to switch on the microphone? Do you want to turn on the microphone? Perfect. Yes, perfect. Thank you very much. I just want to ask a few questions to stimulate some discussion, and then we'll take some questions from the audience. One of the things that I think is most interesting and perhaps most confusing about the change and potential future change in relations between the countries goes to the specialness that many people who have visited Cuba feel about the place. And so it may be sort of counterintuitive, but there is a concern among many American admirers of Cuba that a normalization of economic relations would change Cuba very profoundly, and that the place that they have gone to and love would be replaced by something more like Cancun, Mexico, sort of that normalization in economic terms could mean Cuba becoming less distinctive, less culturally vibrant, and more of a de facto economic colony of the much larger power of the United States economically. So you're obviously in a phase where you're welcoming investment, you're seeking investment, but do you worry that the balance could go too far?
Well, I think that this is a very good question. It is true that a lot of persons expressed to us this concern. Well, first of all, normalization of relations doesn't mean that we will change our project. We will keep our social values, and we will keep the project that was approved by our people. We have an investment law, and we have several laws that include the respect and the protection to the environment in our country. Then the new hotel, the new investment, first of all, has to respect our law concerning the environment. The other thing, well, for people to be to keep their value, it is important to keep their culture. You know that the Cuban culture is really very developed. We have an authentic culture, and we want to keep our culture. We will share with the tourists our music, our literature, our culture, but we will keep our value. And when you keep your value, and when you keep your culture, you can share with the foreign investment without losing your identity. To keep the identity is maybe one of the most important things for the people. Did you
Yes, just to add something. As part of these laws approved in Cuba to develop our economy and under the respect of our political system that we have had during the last 50 years, we have included the protection of our patrimony, of our environment. That's why it's important that every enterprise, every company that wants to do business in Cuba has to respect first of all, our law of conservative of patrimony, but the second time they have to respect our priorities, because we are open to receive all the proposals that you have, but we have priorities in our economy, because we have an organization of our main issues to develop our economy. And one of these issues is the foreign investment, but it depends on our condition, our interests, and our priorities. That's why it's important that the process, to respect the process, that in the first step is to present a proposal to the Cuban authorities. The second step is that the Cuban authorities analyze each of these proposals. And the third step could be maybe to visit Cuba and explore these opportunities or more opportunities that you can have in Cuba. But just I wanted to add this, that Cuba has as a principle to respect our patrimony, to respect our environment.
Thank you. Looking towards this more open future and a greater degree of economic integration, how does the Cuban government, and also how do you believe the average Cuban citizen views the Cuban-American population? Would the return, either physical return or the economic return of Cuban Americans who have been, on the whole, very successful in the United States, would that be welcomed in Cuba, or is that something that is that's seen as problematic?
Well, the reality is that they are now welcome in Cuba, the Cuban American. Well, like I explained, the Cuban American now, the majority of the Cuban Americans are having a very positive position toward Cuba. They want to develop relations with their country. They want to press the U.S. government to have better relations with Cuba. We are in contact now with several entrepreneurs, Cuban American entrepreneurs, and they are studying how to invest in Cuba and how to support the development of our country.
From the perspective of the Cuban side, what are the conditions that you would like to see met in order to agree to full normalization, the appointment of ambassadors, the opening of embassies?
Well, this is a process. There are two different moments. First, or one thing is the reestablishment of relations. Reestablishment of relations means to open embassies in each country. For doing that, we are discussing now with the State Department. We are organizing how to do it in a way that the result would be positive and that we can avoid in the future problems in the relation. From our side, we have to explain that we need two important things. First of all, we need to have banking services. Imagine to deal with the market here without having banking service. Imagine to have to pay all your services in cash. Well, we have to pay all our services in cash. Then one of the things to be an embassy is to have banking issue. The other thing, in our opinion, is maybe a very important thing, is that you know that Cuba was included, in our opinion, it was a mistake and unfair decision. Cuba was included in the list of countries that support international terrorism. Everybody knows that Cuba doesn't support international terrorism, and that Cuba is now playing an important role in the process of peace in the region. Cuba is playing a role in the process of peace in Colombia. Then President Obama announced that Cuba should be removed from the list. We hope that in the next day Cuba will be removed from this list. Then these two things would be resolved. We think that in the next future, in the very next future, we will have embassy, Cuba here in Washington and United States in Havana. The second part of the process is normalizing relations. Normalizing relations could be a long process, because this process should include the lifting of the so-called embargo. And another issue to discuss and to resolve is the Guantanamo naval base in Cuba. But in our opinion, the most important now is that both countries are willing to discuss and are willing to find a solution for the thing that has separated both countries during the last 50 years.
Just wanted to add that this process has been a demonstration that two countries with deep differences could talk, could have a discussion under the respect in equal conditions. And this is a long process. It will be a long process. The first step could be the opening of the embassies, but it's the beginning, because during the last 50 years we haven't had relationships. Imagine that. Neither United States, neither Cuba have an idea how can this moving forward. Just that is the beginning with the opening of the embassies. That is a long process, and we hope that with a dialogue we can resolve our differences, and we can in the future normalize the relationship between both countries.
Thank you. Last question from me, and then we'll go to the audience. There's a microphone here. If anybody would like to come to it, we can form a line, and we'll get through as many as we can. You, I'm sure, are aware. I go back to the theme of the Cuban American population. Certainly, you're aware that for the first time there is a top-tier candidate for president of the United States who is Cuban American. When President Obama ran and was elected, by way of illustration, Kenyans were overjoyed that there was a son of their country who had become president of the United States. Back in history, when Jack Kennedy became president of the United States, the Irish were proud of this. Any comment you'd like to make about Marco Rubio?
Well, you know that the position of Marco Rubio is against the process of approachment between both countries. But I really think that anyone can oppose the history. What we have today is a result of a process, a social process is a result of the history. Is the win of the reason, is the win of the intelligence of the American people, of the Cuban people, because really the most intelligent for both sides is to change the current policy, to start a new policy, to start a new relation between both countries, because there are a lot of things that we can do together in favor of Cuba, in favor of the United States, and in favor of the rest of the countries in the region. Then people like Marcos Rubio, he's not the only one, will be put in the past. They will be put in the past, and the new generation, the new ideas will impose their reason to improve the relation and to develop the commercial, social, and political relations between Cuba and the United States.
Yeah, I think the reality is more strong that is stronger than the Marco Rubio would think. The last survey shows that more than 50% of the population in the United States is in favor of the normalization of the relationship between Cuba and the United States. I think Marco Rubio cannot fight against that. And in this moment, we are seeing that people is very interested in having that kind of relationship with Cuba, to know the Cuban reality. I think it will be imposed in this moment and in the future.
Thank you. Questions from our audience, please. Come on over.
Can you hear me okay? This past summer, Google Chrome was made available to Cubans, and it's estimated that like 5% of Cubans have internet access. How will Cuba address the issue of all of a sudden, you know, an emergence of the internet and the infrastructure that's going to be involved for companies to expand over there, but yet protect the people from, you know, protect the people from the internet?
Yes, I understand your question. Well, first of all, I have to say that our goal is to have a computer with internet access in each Cuban home. We welcome the new regulation of administration concerning the telecommunication sector. You know that telecommunication sector is the only sector that had a better position in the regulation. Even the investment would be allowed in Cuba in telecommunication sector. It's really a sector we are interested in developing. We are interested in improving our telecom infrastructure.
Yes, I mean, Google has really,
Yes,
you know, said how interested
Yes.
they are in investing in that.
they have made a very serious study, and we are in contact with them. We are studying how to put in place this project. How it is true that internet is risky.
Yes.
Everybody know that, but you know, the best way to be protected from the risk of internet is to have a people well educated, when you have a people well educated, with values, with a very good preparation to face all the risks, you don't have to be afraid of this risk. I have my experience. I have a daughter. She is 16, and she's always connected to the net. And I discuss with her all the risks, how she has to face this situation. It's important to have a well-educated people.
Right.
Thank you. Please.
Hello, thank you for coming. My question is, how do you think that the lift of the travel ban, including an increase in foreign investment, especially American investment, will affect the Cuban identity?
Affect the Cuban reality.
Cuban identity. Cubanness, being Cuban.
Well, no. We are open for the cultural exchange. First of all, the tourism industry is one of the most important sectors in our economy. We are really open to tourists. We are really open to invest in Cuba. Like I said, we are having now every year 3 million of tourists in Cuba. And the reality is that the balance is positive for us, the balance of the exchange of the Cuban people with the tourists. Everybody, when the tourists go to Cuba, they come back to Europe and to the United States with a different position about Cuba. They understand our reality. They understand, they know better our people. The best way to know about Cuba is to exchange with the people on the street, because you will find a people with very high values, with a very high national identity. Cuban love Cuba. Then we are open for the tourists.
I have a more negative feeling than what you've performed for us today, because when you get to be old, you start remembering everything that Cuba stood for the last 50 years, which was a problem for us. We had a textile company in Cuba many years ago, 30s, and we couldn't understand why we couldn't get better performance out of that, and it was clear that what was happening with the Castro administration, and we left. But also, the heart and soul of Cuba left and created in Miami a very powerful organization. Entrepreneurs came in there and felt comfortable in our country and produced good citizenship and wonderful stuff in Miami. So what I didn't hear you talk about very much, and I'm wondering why, is the political life of what's going on now. How is it any different? I mean, we've watched nothing happen in Cuba for 50 years. And yet when we were there was art, and my dad came back with beautiful paintings of a particular group, and there was workers, but nothing happened in the last 50 years. Now all of a sudden somebody will write the book, and I don't think it was the Pope that really did it, but somebody opened up the way to bring us back. And from a political point of view, there's no question we should have good relationships with you. You're close to us, and with the world in very crazy times right now, it would be hard for us to have enemies sitting in Cuba in some form or other, as when Russia came in, if you remember. As I tell you, at 81, I have a long memory, and I'm concerned. But I didn't hear you talk, and the question I have for you, given this background, is do you see improvement in the political life, giving these people a chance to grow? Certainly when the Americans come in, you'll see what entrepreneurial thing is about. That's a good sign. But how do you deal with the political life that we really can't control, as you well know?
Okay. Is there another question in this direction? For having another answer? Well, I understand your question. Everybody wants to know about the political situation in Cuba, what is happening. Well, to understand the political situation in Cuba, you have to study our you have to study our history. You have to study our society. The concept of democracy and political system is not only one. We have to accept that there are different.
I'm sorry, they still can't hear well. Let's just try and raise this. Okay.
Well, the concept of democracy and political system could be different for each country, for each society. If we talk about democracy, well, if you study the word, demo, people, and cracy, government. Democracy is the government for the people, is the government of the people. I participate in an election commission in Cuba several years ago. Elections in Cuba are like a referendum. When you vote for your candidate in your neighborhood, you are voting for the revolution or not. If you make for a candidate, you are saying, I support the political system of my country. But if you doesn't write anything in your vote, you are saying, I am against of the political system in my country. But I have the experience of participating in an electoral commission. The accounting of the vote in Cuba is in a table with the neighborhood around the table. The neighborhood controlling the result. Then you have to come and you have to say one vote for this person, one vote for this person. This is a white vote. It means that this person doesn't vote in favor of the political system. This election was in a very bad period for Cuba, the special period. And I really was afraid. I was afraid of the result. People started to count 1-1-1. Well, the result was that 99% of my neighbors vote in favor of our political system. And this is the behavior of the election in Cuba. The majority of the people support our government. That is our democracy. It's a government for the people. And in Cuba, the political participation of the people is guaranteed through this kind of election. You cannot impose a political system for another people from another country in your own country. For example, I have studied your political system and I understand that it's a result of your history, of your society, and I respect your political system. I have learned that all here, living for 4 years in the United States. Then I invite you to contact with my people, to have my same experience, to deal with our people on the street, and you will understand our political system and why we say that we have our own democracy in Cuba.
Hi, I'm at Friends Select School right down the street on the Parkway, and my colleague and I that I'm here with this evening are part of a group that's planning a year-long program of study on Cuba. So I'm just interested in hearing from both the panelists. If you could pick 3 things that you would want students, young people today, to learn about in order to understand where Cuba is today and where it's going in the 21st century, what would those 3 things be?
I give you the floor.
Well, we have a lot of possibilities. We have talked about all the possibilities that we have of educational exchange, cultural exchange. We have talked with Drexel University, with Temple University. We have a potential area, many potentiality, a lot of potentiality to have exchange in education and culture. In Cuba, we have a university in each province. It's like the states here in the United States. And we have programs for foreign students in each university. We have programs to learn Spanish, in Cuban history, in culture, in Cuban culture, and you can go there as a group or individually and take that kind of courses that we have there. If you want, you can present us a proposal with your interests, your objectives, your proposal of days that you have as part of the study abroad that you have in the university, in your university, and we will send this proposal to the Ministry of Education, the higher education in Cuba, and they analyze the proposal and they decide what is the best for you. But we have a lot of possibilities to have that kind of exchanges in Cuba. Just you have to present a proposal and we can do the best for you.
I want to thank everyone for being here. I neglected earlier to thank Pam Martin for her help in arranging this visit. I want to thank our guests. This has been an informative and really important discussion. We appreciate your coming to Philadelphia and participating with us. Thank all of you for being with us. We're adjourned.